Hello, I'm Dr. Charles Majors, co-author of the new book, Cancer Killers, The Cause is the Cure, and I want to welcome you to the Maximize Living Makeover. But before you listen to the doctor who's about to present, I'm going to explain to you not only why I wrote this book, but I'm going to explain to you why you're sitting in those seats right now. About 3 years ago, I began getting severe headaches to the point where I could no longer take care of my children. I couldn't go to the office anymore. It went from headaches to where I was literally getting weak. I would go 2 to 3 days at a time, not getting out of bed. And with no one knew what it was. Blood works were not showing exactly yet what it was. And so I went months and months of that. And probably a year later, after having the headaches, passing out, being weak all the time, I finally had an MRI of the brain, and they had found 4 tumors in the brain. A lot of you have seen those pictures in the book. There was 4 tumors in the brain. And at that moment, the doctors there at Northwestern figured it must be benign. I was young. They thought I was healthy. There was no way this was anything but benign. So they went in after about an 8 to 9 hour surgery. They went up into the brain, right where you see the scar. They went up into the brain. They began to get rid of the first tumor, and as soon as they touched it, it was bleeding all over the brain. At that moment, the neurosurgeon got out of there. He figured out at that moment this was not benign, it was cancer. I had cancer throughout the brain. I had 4 tumors. Not worse than that is he literally walked into the room where my mother was, where Dr. Ben Lerner was, and other Maximize Living doctors was, and he had let them know I may not even wake up in the morning because the cancer had been spreading to the brain. The cancer was swelling. And so, thank goodness, I woke up in the morning. I had a tube in the throat, couldn't speak at all. I had a tube in the stomach to eat. I had already lost 40 pounds. I was in a wheelchair, could barely walk or move. And at that moment, they came in with the bad news telling me that this was all cancer in the brain. But worse than that is it was coming from somewhere else in my body. It was actually coming from the bone marrow. They did a bone marrow test. 37% of my bone marrow, 37% of my blood was producing cancer every single day. And it was spreading, and it went to the brain. And so at that moment, they said I had a few choices. You know, they could do more cutting on me, which means they were going to do a bone marrow transplant. They could do poison, chemotherapy, and put that into my bloodstream. Or they could also do radiation to burn some of the tumors there. So I had the choice. I could do the cut, poison, and burn, or I could find out what was causing this cancer. And in the moments they told me this, and they said, you know, this cancer was a stage 4, metastasized to the brain with weeks to live, I still at that moment said, if I cut my arm right now, what would happen? It would heal. And so if my brain can send a message and heal that cut, and it can heal this cancer, I just have to figure out what's interfering and why this cancer was happening. And so I made the choice to leave that hospital knowing that God needs no help healing, no interference. I would find that interference. And at that moment, we began with the Maximize Living doctors. They went in, researched it. We found the right places to go. I went to another doctor in Reno, Nevada, who began doing work on me. I began doing the protocols that you're going to see, and not only reading this book, a lot of these protocols you're going to hear about this weekend. And what you're really going to find out is that there is a choice, there is a possibility, that there's always hope. And from there, I got to the cause, and now 2 years later, I was diagnosed 2 years ago in September. And 2 years later, I'm standing here in front of you, presenting with the new book, presenting to you, and welcoming you to the makeover. So I want you to open your hearts. I want you to open your minds, because those of you that are patients, congratulations for being patients. And you're going to find out today why you're going to be patients for the rest of your life. But those of you that aren't patients, you're also going to have that choice at the end, and we're going to give you that opportunity to become a patient as well. So don't worry about that either. And also, the doctors are going to be recommending you some amazing supplements, the things that I was doing to not only get through my cancer, but these are supplements that are going to help you so you never end up in the position I was in. So I want to welcome everyone and have a great makeover.
So tonight we have so much to go over, and I need help with you guys just staying focused, because it's a ton of information. I spent a lot of time preparing, because even I read the book through twice. I still, you know, so many of the statistics and so many of the things there are huge, but there's really some very specific principles I want you to understand tonight and from what we're doing. Number one, everybody obviously knows it's October, and what comes with October? Pink, right? And I can't tell you how I was sitting actually watching some NFL football on Sunday. I don't do it all the time. But there was pink towels and pink wrist guards and pink on helmets and pink cleats and pink socks and pink jerseys. And you guys don't even understand what this pink awareness really is. But I want you to understand, with the statistics that I'm going to share with you tonight, we are being pink washed, and it's become a very large business. And what they are finding is the monies that are raised, and I have a pie chart for you, and I couldn't, for some reason, couldn't cut it into these slides that I have here, really shows where all the money goes that's raised for the breast cancer awareness in October. But I can tell you that with all of the research and all of the technology and everything that we have no advancements than we did 20 years ago, where we are with our cancer rates, and breast cancer healing. So with that in mind, I want you all to understand tonight what cancer really is, the deadly reality and the stats that they are, what cancer isn't, and how not to get it, and how to prevent it, and then get on the plan. Like, I'm on the Don't Get the Cancer plan. And we have practical steps and resources for you. And a lot of patients you've already engaged, and you're going to hear from some great patients tonight. I have two testimonials in particular that I really would love for you to hear and share, and they're wonderful people. But what we need to know is really where we are in America. So when I talk about the statistic up here, it says 42 point whatever %, but in reality, we can read that as really 1 out of 2 men and women will get cancer now. And when I look at that, and I don't know if you guys know, this is an adult statistic, but I did a little bit further digging, and the children's statistic, we have more children's cancer than we ever have in history, in decades. And in a decade, we've risen children's cancer 29%. So 1 in 300 boys from age 1 to 14, and 1 in 330 girls will get cancer. And the death rate is the #1 death rate for children between ages 1 and 14. Can you believe that? It's not SIDS, it's not autism, it's not trauma, it's cancer. And I don't know about all of you, but you will all look a little more aged in here like myself, and that wasn't even around when I was a kid. I mean, that wasn't even a thought process or something that you even stopped on the playground to think about. But now our children are going to school with children who have bald heads and who you check out of school for 6 months at a time, or who never come back. And so the sad reality is that when we look at the improvements we have, well, I did a little more digging, and I found that the FDA has only 1 approved drug to treat children with cancer, and it's the same drug they've had on the market for 25 years. So with all of this cancer research and all of the money going into cancer, it concerns me that we have a 29% increase in less than a decade, but yet we're still sick and a dying nation in America. So we need to figure out how not to be that statistic. And I understand that a lot of you sitting here tonight, and I'm going to say, Chuck Majors, I call him Chuck because I've known him a long time, Charlie said, it's not going to be me. It's not going to be. There is no way it's me. I've been getting adjusted for years. I work out every single day. I take my protein powder. I'm golden. And no lie, he had that swagger. He had that attitude. It's not going to be me. I was sitting next to him down in, it's a small town outside of Orlando. We were doing a training with about an elite group of about 25 chiropractors, and we were doing a maximized mind training, you know, for our leadership team. And he was supposed to teach part of it, and he was sitting to the left of me, and he sat there and he kept like nodding off, and he kept like going in and out of reality. That's all I could think. And he's like, my head hurts so bad. This was June. He said, I think I'm going to go back to my room and I'm going to lay down. and everybody was adjusting him, and people were bringing their juicers over, and he was doing his protein, and everybody thought that that was going to make him better. The reality is he already had 4 tumors growing in his brain, pressing on his brain so bad that he couldn't even stay awake or let alone function based on the swelling in his brain. The neurosurgeon did tell him, this is a picture right here, he said we wanted to see the pictures, 4 inoperable brain tumors. So the day he checked in was the day after Labor Day, because everybody was down in Naples on holiday having a good time on a little island off of Naples, and he couldn't get out of bed. Then he started throwing up, so he was down there with his wife and children. They had to get him on the plane. But here's the reality, and this is why I show the picture. It's not going to be me. I'm 30 whatever years old. I'm young, I'm buff, I'm full of health, I'm full of life. It's not going to be me. And I'm here to tell you, look around the room right now. The statistic is 1 out of 2, 1 out of 2, 1 out of 2. So which one of you 2 is it not going to be? Why won't it be 0 out of 2? We don't want it. We're not going to get it. And that's what tonight's designed to do, is to be cancer killers. This is Chuck after he lost 40 pounds. He still doesn't look like he used to. I mean, he had a lot of body wasting, and he's altered his workout, and he's surge training now. He's not meathead lifting any longer. He's doing a lot of different things and restoring his health. But he shared these pictures with us because he wanted you to see the reality of what health should be. And I don't know if anybody's ever sat in a cancer ward, and I hate to paint these pictures, but we got to know what it's like. I've been in a cancer ward, and I've been adjusting patients in a cancer ward. I was right out of school, and I was practicing in Newport Beach, California, and it was another doctor, as a matter of fact, who came under my care, and I met him through, he was a leadership speaker across the country, and I met him through a speaker group that I had gone to, and he had like stage 4 of some kind of cancer, and he got him under care, and talked to him about, he said, listen, I'm not doing the conventional medicine, the chemo, everything they want me to do. He had to wear like a stocking on his leg for all this limb swelling, a stocking on his arm. He had since then lost all of his hair, and he said, it may be late for me in the game, but it's not over. And he said, I'm going to fight this with everything, every principle that I've learned through you, everything that I know about how the body heals and functions, because I go into that cancer ward and I see those people and they never come out. And that's not going to be me. And I adjusted him up to the day he died in the hospital. But I would leave on my lunch break. I'd go late at night, and I'd have to sneak in because it was unconventional that I was a chiropractor going in and adjusting, another doctor in the hospital. But he sat in the hospital bed in the cancer ward, and there are people lined up with tubes or getting their chemo all the time, everything that's going on. And he kept saying, we're going to fight this thing. So his maximized mind was awesome. I got to him too late. I don't want to get to anybody too late. And that's what one of my sole purposes for what we're doing. So we have to know about health and how to be healthy and what cancer is and what it isn't. And as I said before, it's a really important part of understanding how you're not going to be the one, okay? So the health all begins in the cell. So what is cancer? Cancer is really when cells don't die off. Okay, so on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, we have new cells, trillions and trillions of cells in our body that are turning over. And we want to turn over healthy new cells, right? So we have cell death, degeneration, and then we have new healthy cells. The problem is every cell in their life cycle should complete that. Cancer cells do not, meaning they do not die off. So they have an abnormal cell growth, and then it forms more cells, and they're not healthy cells. And when you have a group of cells that have multiplied and quadruplified enough, that turns into a tumor. It takes weeks, years, months for a tumor to grow and be measured, detected, and diagnosed. It just didn't happen overnight. So, what are the causes of cancer? Very interesting when you understand how the disease works and why. Cancer really is just being very toxic is what they found out through research. So the characteristics of a healthy, let's look at healthy and a cancer cell. Well, healthy cells use what? Oxygen for fuel. And what do cancer cells feed off of? Sugar. And I know that a lot of you have read your nutrition books like you're supposed to, and a lot of you have done your nutrition consults, and many of you may have been to the nutrition talk that we've done, or even the other cancer talk we did a few months ago. But sugar is deadly, but actually feeds the cells. I'm going to talk about what the sugar is. So healthy cells don't use sugar for fuel, and cancer cells don't use oxygen for fuel. They hate oxygen, because oxygen actually, when they get in the cell, can change the cell life, which is awesome. And they use oxygen therapy actually as an alternative for cancer patients, which you'll see in your cancer book. It lives a slightly alkaline environment, and cancer loves acidity. Okay, and so you guys have your test strips, and we're going to check in a little bit about where we are on our alkalinity acidity levels. And we need a proper nerve supply, which is the most important function. And cancer cells need no nerve supply. Actually, it cuts them off. They don't need that to survive. So that's a pretty scary thought. So cancer doesn't make you sick. It's sickness over time that creates cancer. And understanding that, I feel fine, I feel fine, I feel fine. Oh, I'm healthy, I'm healthy, I'm healthy. It's not going to be me. Soon turns into, how did I get this diagnosis? And I want to share with you, that was my dad. And I used his testimony because it's costly for me to fly him down here, and then he'd want the stage the whole time, and I could never get through any of my information, and he'd tell you all about it. But my dad, who really essentially did a lot of things right his whole life, he was really the driving force behind my brother and I. My mom was a supporting force. My dad had the carrot and the stick. And with our nutrition, with our vitamins, with our exercising or working out, and we were both very successful athletes growing up. And he really believed in proper nutrition, and he found out about the best vitamins that were, that we could get. And I always remember the UPS truck coming down our long drive. We lived out in the middle of nowhere in the country. And we even raised Angus beef cows with no hormones, no antibiotics, and grass-fed, so we could have our own beef, which turned me into a vegetarian for 26 years, but that's another story, because they were my friends and my pets, and they went away in a truck and came home in a box, and I said, that's it, I'm not doing it. But he had the right concept. He was always a little bit ahead of the curve. However, what he didn't understand was how your body works and functions every day. So he thought if he exercised and he looked like this short little Italian guy, and he worked out every day, and he ate some pretty good food, he thought, and he drank the right things. He didn't drink alcohol much growing up. I very rarely remember my parents. Well, when I was little, I remember some parties, but after that, I don't remember a lot. And he also took a lot of vitamins. He was diagnosed, I think it's 2 years now, with prostate cancer, like out of the blue. So he's in complete denial. He calls me up. How can I have prostate cancer? There's no way. It can't be me. They're wrong. They do the biopsy. It is prostate cancer. And then so they want to treat it conventionally. And my dad is, if you have ever and ever will meet my dad, there's nothing conventional about him, so he's not going to do that either. But he doesn't have the resources. He's not sure. So he starts the Google search, and he starts all this stuff on the computer. And I'm getting blasted by emails and articles that he wants me to read. And I said, Dad, let's get here. Flew him down, and I said, I'm going to show you a very few specific things why cancer got you. Remember that area in your back you've complained about since I can't even remember? Okay, you don't take care of your spine, but when we had injuries, you take us to the chiropractor. We only know to go to the chiropractor for pain or injury. And you're Italian, and I've never seen you eat nothing but pasta, white pasta with lots of stuff, and Italian bread. And you eat all of the, what is that called? The pepperoni. He did like the pepperoni. He'd come home from the Italian bakery every Saturday morning with a hunk of cheese, a hunk of loaf of bread, the Italian bread, and the pepperoni. And then here, it's free-for-all. But my dad was having sugar every day of his life, and he didn't even realize it. He also, I said, let's take an x-ray. Here's part 2. I said, I'm going to show you that area in your back that you've complained about your entire life, and I'm going to show you exactly the subluxation that you have that's pressing on the nerve that goes exactly to your prostate. I don't believe it. Of course, he doesn't believe it. I'm his daughter. So we take the x-ray, put it up in front of him. He's like, that doesn't look right. I go, that is not right, Dad. That is a gross misalignment. That's subluxation. There's so much degeneration and damage attached there. It's been pressing on this nerve. Look where it goes. Wow, my prostate. I said, this is how you got prostate cancer. We've been feeding it for years. You have lack of nerve supply. And just because you're doing things from the outside in doesn't mean you can't get cancer. So I'm going to go on with the rest of my story in a little bit. okay? Cancer in the immune system. He thought he was healthy. We know that our immune system is very important for how our body works and functions. So at any given time, and this is a pretty cool study, we have 10, 100, 1,000 cancer cells in our body. Everybody does. You do, I do, we all have them walking around, swimming around. What is a cancer cell? It's an abnormal cell that doesn't die, right? Do you think a couple are bad? They're not. Hopefully our immune system is going to support that and help them die off. But the problem is when our immune system drops through lack of nerve function, through lack of oxygen, through lack of a lot of things, the cancer cells get a chance to rise. So our immune system suppresses. So now we go back to that children's stat that I gave you. We have all these childhood sicknesses and diseases like never before, and kids are thrown on antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic. What do you think the chances are, and what do you think the studies are now showing, linking kids on chronic antibiotic use to what? Cancer. Okay, so this is making a story. The immune system gets weak, and then cancer can do what? Take over. So 5 treatments of cancer. This is conventional, and we have to know what America does. Now, do we know that it's international. It's just more prevalent here in the United States than ever in any other country. The way we treat cancer is a little bit frightening. I would be frightened if I was going to jump into that arena. And I know that I have had some patients who have been in that arena, haven't I? And it's a pretty frightening place to be, isn't it? So they treat chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, we cut it out, we drug it, and then we transplant those pieces that we can that can get new working parts, right? So, and we talk about health and we talk about conventional medicine, and what we've done is drug it, drug it, drug it, cut it out, right? We've learned that through the process of why our American standards of health is so far below other countries. History of chemo. Now this was really interesting. I was just discussing with Chris the other day. He's like, I don't get it. Mustard gas? Are you kidding me? This is what we're killing cancer with? But back in the day, in the First World War, they used it as chemical warfare. So they were killing people with mustard gas. Chemo is a form of that same chemical. So we're hoping that we're going to inject it all into your body, this mustine, right? And then hopefully it doesn't kill everything. And it may kill the cancer if we're lucky. But do you know what the #1 cause of death of cancer is? Do you think it's the cancer? No, it's not. It's the sickness and the diseases and the organ shutdown and the cell death that happens along the way. That's not good. So it's a slow killing process. Side effects of, I don't even like this slide. These are side effects of chemotherapy. And I've seen people with the chemo burns and the radiation burns. And have you ever watched a person go through that? It's heart-wrenching because we've had patients that have been through that, and they come in gray. You know, when people are gray, that shows me lack of oxygen, shows me cell death. It also shows me that they're dying because there's not enough oxygen to their body when you start turning gray. Have you ever seen somebody who's barely survived a stroke and they look ashen? Same thing with chemotherapy patients. There's no health and livelihood. There's no pinkness to the skin, but it's dead and peeling away because the chemo kills everything. And you're lucky if it kills the cancer cells. So then we cut it out. And what we found through surgery, guess what? We go in and we disrupt a bunch of tumors and a bunch of cells. What happens? Spreads. And that's the concern, you know. So what's really interesting, my mom's 2-time breast cancer survivor, and she's still with us. So the first time they went in, they did a lumpectomy. And she wasn't even sure that she wanted to do that. And they already had biopsied and did some lymph biopsy and found out it wasn't lymph spread, it wasn't anything. I discussed some of the options with her. And I'm like, look, Mom, when they go in and they start cutting, you know, then there's a chance that they don't get it all, and then guess what happens? The cancer returns, or it gets worse, or it goes bloodborne at that point, because now it's very encapsulated, and now we've released the cells into the blood, and what does it do? So we have to take a look at what are our options, and are they the right options? And so my mom had breast cancer return the second time, many years later, and guess what? One of the first things they told her, oh, we must have not got it all the first time. Yeah, it's just not, that doesn't go well in my book. We didn't treat it conventionally because the first time she tried conventionally, it almost killed her. And I got the phone call that she wasn't going to live in a 24-hour period of time. And we decided that that was not an option, got the oncologist on the phone, got him to give her an IV bag of vitamin C, of B vitamins, and as many antioxidants as possible. She was bombarded with a peritoneal infection that was taking over her whole body, and her organs started to shut down. And the oncologist said, I really haven't seen this before. She's pretty healthy, and we just had a lumpectomy. I'm like, no, your chemo and radiation has started to kill her. And she opted that. We argued about it. I couldn't talk her out of the paper bag that we were in. But in just 4 or 6 weeks' time, that's where she was at, with a simple lumpectomy. And so he did what I asked. He said, because she's not responding to any drug or any treatment that I do. And quite interestingly, I've never heard of this, but I've read studies about it, so I think I'll give it a try.